Good afternoon. We had a busy day with wonderful awards. I'm Gloria Valencia Weber, and we're getting toward the close. And it's my pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who represents Texas' 18th Congressional District, centered here in Houston. We're truly meeting one of the senior people in the House of Representatives. She is in the 14th term as a member of the House of Representatives, where she currently serves as the Democratic Chief Deputy Whip. Representative Lee also sits on 3 key congressional committees. She is the senior member of the House Committee on the Judiciary, Homeland Security, and the Budget Committee. And she was appointed the first female ranking member of the Judiciary Subcommittee for Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security, which she now chairs. She is obviously serving in all the areas that our contemporary life has as everyday issues for our country. I have observed her in her hearings, and she is direct and committed to doing the best for our country. In addition to her many legislative accomplishments, she is very much part of what we have spent the earlier part of this event talking about. Representative Jackson Lee is the author of the historic Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2022. So I really want you to give a great welcome to somebody who fits with what we've spent our day today talking about. Thank you.
Well, howdy. I hope that you have enjoyed some parts of being in Texas. And if you have not gotten a howdy, then I need to make sure as this meeting closes, you get a howdy. And how are y'all? I hope you're good. I'm delighted to be here and to be able to thank the members of the Legal Services Corporation Board, to thank and acknowledge all of the presenters, and to thank my dear friend and committed advocate for justice, and that is Justice Nathan L. Heck. I want you to give him a very big hand again. Do that again, please. And stand up. You're in the room, stand up. I'm looking all over. I might have missed him. I thought he was. This is society. Well, tell him he's getting a grade, and he should wave in for a moment. I can't start unless he waves himself in. After I've indicated to him that he is one of those who loves justice in the state of Texas. There you go, Judge Nathan Heck. It is extremely important. I want those of you to know who are from out of town how important it is to have a justice on the Texas Supreme Court affiliate and associate and have a great interest in justice being rendered unfairly, unbiased, and with an even hand, and being able to embrace the word justice. And that is Justice Nathan Heck. Give him another big hand, please. He was engaged and I was engaged as I was coming up. And so I wanted to make sure he knows that I really appreciate the hosting of this great organization. I certainly have been engaged with the Legal Services Corporation by way of the local organization as a practicing lawyer. I even served on the board for a period of time. It gives me certain credentials to say that I'm one of you and you're one of me. And to see you in this room and to be here today for the 50th commemoration of the Legal Services Corporation, I am humbled and honored that you are still on the battlefield. And what I would say to you is that the work is yet undone. And I know that you've had the privilege of listening to my colleague, the Honorable Lizzie Fletcher. I'm delighted that she was here. I'm going to speak extemporaneously, and we'll probably have dinner together. I got about 4 hours that I'm going to be speaking with you. So get ready and put the plates on the table. To my introducer, thank you so very much. It is a pleasure, Professor, to be with you and to know your great work and to know your work as it relates not only to justice, but to our Native American community, our first Americans, which we should always be reminded of. And I can assure you, you have great leadership as we have opened the doors to members of Congress with such heritage, including our outstanding Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, my dear friend. Please let her know. She was your student?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, then you call her up and say what I said about her, that she ran. We are working together on trying to preserve history, and that history happens to be the history of General Granger. I am going to get to the point. Anybody know who General Granger is or was? He was or was. He's not, he is now. Anybody? We have not done our work. Not done our work. General Granger was the general assigned by Abraham Lincoln to come to the shores of Galveston to finally make an announcement that the slaves were free 2 years after 1865, which generated into a holiday here in Texas that is unique. It was unique, called Juneteenth. And I was privileged to be and am the only sitting member of Congress that has created a national holiday. There are only 11, and so many of you should be aware, because the president signed it just about 2 years ago. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday, which acknowledges the freedom of slaves. Freedom, truly a major component of why you're sitting here today. So let me thank the Pro Bono Service awardees, or acknowledge them and congratulate them, and also acknowledge the commendable work with the Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, which I was introduced to their leader as I came in, also to the Lone Star Legal Aid and the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid as well. Serving 28 years on the House Judiciary Committee, I will just give you an overview because I see and realize that good works have been said by many of my friends, including those who were on the domestic violence panel. I don't know if Emily Dawn Whitehouse is still in the room, but I served on the board with her. I served on your board years ago to the Houston Area Women's Center, and we are constantly on the front lines. The call that I made to you just about a couple of weeks ago, I've not forgotten. It is still something that we need to deal with, but we got caught up in trying to keep the government open, and so it kind of delayed me a little bit. But I was thinking about it, as they say, when you think about things in the dark of night, when you're supposed to be asleep, then you know it was a to-do list. And I said, oh my goodness, I haven't done it. And that is to deal with the issue of domestic violence and how women are received when they go to say that they are feeling that they're in jeopardy. And what has happened is you're told to take a pill and go home. We had that tragically happen here in Houston. And of course, she lost her life in front of her children, and I can't get over it. And so we are continuously realizing that domestic violence remains an epidemic amongst us. So let me try to do an overview of my tenure on judiciary and finish and shorter than those 4 hours that I said that I was going to do. I've enjoyed and was gratified that the leadership, when I came some years ago, gave me no other option, because Barbara Jordan, my mentor, who endorsed me, was still alive when I ran for this position. And even my predecessor was members of the House Judiciary Committee. And Carol, I think, who I have the right name, who was a staffer with John Conyers. I got it right? Got it right. Was a staffer with John Conyers. And he was a tutor of tutees. But we started, we did things practically in the Judiciary Committee at that time. We were hands-on. And so my first recall was Abdou Diablo. And that was an unfortunate individual in New York that suffered at the hands of officers who mistook him for a violent criminal. And unfortunately, he lost his life, which was the beginning, I guess, of our concern for good policing and to have the kind of policing that would not generate into some of the situations that you see today. So what is it that gives life and purpose to all that you do? It is that you are the warriors, you are the armor bearers for those who cannot walk into a law office or even find the legal services office of their particular community. No comment on any one of you. It's just that the vulnerability of these individuals are such that they have so many challenges that sometimes it is even difficult to find the helping hand that is being extended to them, and that is yours. And so it means that we have to be extraordinary in our work of finding them, of working with the faith community, of finding those who would support an America that speaks particularly to the idea that justice should not be limited. Justice should spread out and be part of the very fabric of our lives. Justice should be something that maybe even your first grader would say, justice, mommy or daddy, is making sure that everyone is treated fairly. And as I've seen in the United States Congress, and particularly on the Judiciary Committee, we've had our share of circumstances, along with our fight to ensure that you are continued funding, when there were those who would say, well, what is the value of the Legal Services Corporation? Or we don't want them to be involved in this kind of work. They should be limited. And I remember that debate when we were talking about the issue of landlord-tenant and whether or not you should be involved in that, dealing with the whole question of evictions, which have become, through the pandemic, an epidemic of its own. All of us should remember, as I jump around, seeing those national news stories of carriages, shopping carts coming out of apartments being evicted during the pandemic, before we had devised a program where we could give rental assistance. And so we have to be the ones to articulate to the legislators, state and local, what we see people needing and how people can survive. And whether or not we should be involved in child support cases, yes, we should. And whether or not there are particular types of cases that generate criminal offenses that we should be allowed to be engaged in. When I say that, that is the bar, the civil rights pro bono bar. Because the idea of our friends on the other side of the aisle makes it very difficult for me to use that terminology sometimes, but that's what you see us doing in Washington. And you get people asking, what are you talking about? You just got through arguing with that person. I said, that's the genteel way of dealing with a person who you vigorously disagree with, our friend across the aisle. To convince the legislators that the work of pro bono should have no barriers and no limits. Because when you are desperate for someone else's voice to speak for you. We have something called the Justice of the Peace Courts, and that's where the first eviction cases go. And you should take a day to go to whatever your court is and just listen to those judges, some of whom want to do good. Tell about the painful stories that they are hearing, that there is no relief for these individuals. They have no resources. They're on the verge of being evicted, and they have no voice to speak for them. We have to be, as you have been, an advocacy sometime when it is unpleasant. For I know that you have been rebuffed, rejected, criticized for the work that you're doing or the work you want to do, and saying this is not what you should be doing. Too controversial, too many people against it. And that is clearly where you are needed most. If there is a bounty of people against it, you should be right in the middle of it, because your voice can be heard when theirs cannot. It saddens me that you are limited in your work dealing with immigration, because maybe in your work of immigration, there could have been present day solutions that would help us devise a real, reasonable immigration reform, which I've worked on year after year after year. And in doing so, we come up against the legislative rebuff that one, we don't want immigrants, we don't want migrants, but what we want is for everyone to go. Your voices as lawyers, finding the legal pathway can be a giant step forward for all of these persons who can only look to you for that gratification. For even as we met the family of Abdou Diallo and other cases dealing with police encounters of African-American male mostly, the cases continued until we were able to stand up a community of advocates who realized that we had to find a way to support those who protect us, and as well to find a pathway that those who are most vulnerable, in the instance of African-American men or African-American persons or minorities, could find a way of being treated that did not result in the loss of their life, did not result in the loss of Breonna Taylor, or the loss of many others, cafeteria worker, many others that we would find. And then we had to find a way that we wouldn't have a woman who confronted domestic violence, had a new life, 5 children, and unfortunately her former spouse came and killed her, the children, and the spouse, leaving only 1 child out of her 5 remaining. That's how violent life can get for people who live in the vulnerable lanes of life. And then, of course, not having food, because you cannot access the pro bono system, is a mighty challenge to have. And so my words are that we are guided as lawyers by the Constitution, which believes in equal justice under the law, reflected in the fact that our founding fathers, and I would imagine mothers if they had been mentioned, began that understanding at the beginning of the preamble to the Constitution. Many of you know that the words were, "We have come to create a more perfect nation, a more perfect order." I keep that close in the Judiciary Committee. Why am I sitting there? Why am I engaged in debate? Why do I take up a slight umbrage and cause of great disagreement when my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to undermine justice and equality? Because I believe it's a birthright, or at least as you're present in this nation, we owe you a sense of, or a framework of due process. The promise of justice for all is an empty one without access to legal assistance. And your work here is essential to make that a legal reality for low-income individuals facing serious legal problems. The laws of Congress are meaningless if they're not applied equally. And what you do with access to legal aid is critical to ensure that everyone receives the equal protections of our nation's law. Again, I take note of Legal Services Corporation, Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, Lone Star Legal Aid, Texas Rio Grande, and the others across the nation. Long hours, hard battles are what you face, and great disagreement. This will lead me to journeys that take a very long time. Reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act that was ultimately signed by the President of the United States was not an easy journey. It did not happen right after the losing of the legislation, which was 2013. We were returned back year after year after year because we were not Democrats in the majority. We could not get it passed, just as we could not get the gun show loophole, the boyfriend loophole that we wanted to include in our domestic violence, our Violence Against Women Act. We couldn't get those passed because they offended too many people. And so Legal Services Corporation, take the words of Maya Angelou. They show you who they are, that is who they are. Let them know who you are. That even with the boundaries of law and the challenges of funding, find a legal and pointed way of indicating that there are persons who are unattended, untaken care of, my new word, if you are not in place. And the reason is because there are so many that go lost and left behind if legal services is not there to be with them, or even legal services not there to come to members of the United States Congress or the Judiciary Committee and say, I need this amendment. This is not going to work. You need to add this. We're losing cases or we can't take cases because we're being blocked by legislation that put a barrier into us serving the vulnerable and desperate people. We need champions of Violence Against Women Act, but we need champions of those who want to protect our children. We need champions of those who want to be able to have real gun laws with the real understanding of being able to have gun storage, to close the boyfriend loophole, to be able to ensure that guns are not proliferating because we don't have a regulatory scheme that says that everyone should, in essence, come under those laws, come under the laws to ensure freedom and justice belongs to everyone. Remember what I said. The bill was reauthorized in 2000, 2005, and 2013. But we had to wait until 2022, fighting 1 year after another, because we could not convince Republicans to go ahead and do something that would save lives. Think of that as you work as a lawyer, that not only is your work in that courthouse, but how many lives will you save because you are working with the Legal Services Corporation framework and agenda that is passed by the United States Congress. That in fact, you will work with human trafficking because that was a provision I pushed to get in so that you also have the ability to deal with the issues of human trafficking, anti-human trafficking. And read your authorization to know that you can address that question along with sex trafficking, creating a demonstration program on trauma-informed training for law enforcement, which is something we want to take up and promote. And so when we think of laws, your work, let us think of them being intertwined. But in the mix of being intertwined, let me think of your passion, your willingness to go the extra step, to be able to fight just a little bit more because we're leaving so many people behind. Those who are vulnerable to their own economic condition, they can't get private counsel. You are it for them, and they are yours. And as I leave you with the understanding of this great work, I want to make sure that you're aware that we did great things in the Violence Against Women Act. We expanded protections for vulnerable populations, such as youth, survivors without shelter, Native American women, and LGBTQ+. That had never been before. We're still being challenged, if you will, by dealing with the issue of shelter, which we had gotten in the legislation, the idea that you did not have to leave shelter if the rental, lease, or mortgage was in the hand of the perpetrator. We're still fighting that. We passed it, and unfortunately, we saw some of that removed in the work in the Senate. But I am not giving up. Each year, we look to make the Violence Against Women Act more relevant to the people who are desperately in need for that kind of protection. We have to realize that domestic violence, which is what I think I was assigned to do, on a typical day, your materials show over 19,000 calls in our domestic violence hotlines nationwide, and abuses access to a firearm increases the risk of intimate partner femicide by 400%. And in 2018, partner violence accounted for 20% of all violent crime. Remember, the children see this. And in many instances, the children are left with no parents, no guardians, no one to care for them. For me, this is an ongoing and unending challenge. It is an emotional one. It's one that I believe we all should take up as our cause and believe that there should be no loopholes in saving lives, no loopholes in ensuring that the Violence Against Women Act is complete and whole, and nothing that undermines what Barbara Jordan said in the Judiciary Committee when she argued for we the people. It is not our individual selves, but you as lawyers, and I as someone who serves in the United States Congress on a committee that holds the Constitution in its hands and nurtures it, I should realize that my task is we the people. You've had a good day of knowledge and information. I've simply wanted to reinforce the crucialness of what I believe our oath that we take, both as lawyers and that I take as a member of the United States Congress. I will always continue to look for justice, and I will dig deep to find freedom. Maybe I will find, as I turn the corner, a better pathway for human rights. And yes, I will be honored to find justice, matching freedom, and human rights, and peace, and equality, and recognizing people that are typically not recognized. I believe we must remain committed to advancing and expanding access to life-saving supports and services to those in need. I've got to keep looking for the roof over that family's head. I've got to keep looking for a room for that child to do their homework and sleep in a comfortable bed. I've got to keep looking for that family to be warm together out of the rain, and maybe a miracle in Houston out of the snow. I've got to keep looking to ensure that the laws we pass are clearly laws that give us the hope of a better and brighter day. Regardless of who I serve with in the United States Congress, and I work with them all, I must have the hope that springs eternal. And I take an oath of that when I was sworn in to the bar, that I've always cherished, and then I took the oath when I was sworn into the United States Congress to defend this nation and its laws. Now I have the duty of passing laws that are worthy of my defense and worthy of your defense, worthy of our courts and our lawyers, bringing justice every single day. I'm grateful to the Legal Services Corporation. I'm grateful for you taking the moment to be able to listen and to be reminded of the champions of freedom and justice, such as Dr. Martin Luther King's dream, and as well Barbara Jordan's recollection of we the people. That is whose pathway we should be following. And I know for this, in spite of the good days and the bad days, we will wake up with a smile on our face, because we'll be in the justice business and the freedom fighting business. God bless all of you. Continue your great work. And thank you all for being here in Houston, Texas, in the 18th Congressional District. Thank you so very much.